Hey everyone, are there some cracks appearing in the feed of the Kubernetes megalith? You're watching TechStrong Gang. Hey everyone, it's Alan Shimel and welcome to our Friday edition of TechStrong Gang. We're actually, as you know, we record TechStrong Gang the day before. So it's actually Thursday. It's a little quiet here in the morning because the place isn't open yet, but we're on the floor here at KubeCon and we're wrapping up our KubeCon coverage on Thursday. You'll be able to start seeing, well, if you didn't catch it live streamed, you'll see it next week probably on demand. But for today's gang, I'm really pumped to introduce our latest guest here on the gang. He's becoming an official gang member. He's someone I've known in the tech community for a long time, and I'll leave it at that. My friend Chris Short. Hey, Chris, man, welcome.
Thank you.
We don't usually do this, but being we're on camera or on the site here and it's your first time on, give people a little bit of you, of who you are and where you've been.
I'm Chris Short. I've been in tech pretty much my entire career. Joined the Kubernetes project in 2017 and have been a member of the community ever since. I'm currently the co-lead of Kubernetes contributor communications, and I also run the open source program office at a startup called CIQ.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And of course, joining Chris and me is the Dean, Mike Vizard. He's been out doing interviews most of the night, he says, but you can guess. But he's here today, and that's what's important. Mike, what do we got for today?
Well, we're leading off with this article that you wrote over on Cloud Native Now about the cracks maybe in the Kubernetes monolith community. And the idea here is that folks are getting a little frustrated maybe on one hand, and then the other side of it is that the foundation themselves have become, like most nonprofits, they wind up kind of servicing their own internal political issues more than they actually wind driving the innovation maybe.
So is it monolith or megalith?
I think it could be, those might be synonyms you would find in the dictionary.
Maybe.
We'll go with it. But here's the thing though. And it's why I love tech.
Right.
Last year, the year before that, we were writing about there is nothing on the horizon that's going to stop this locomotive.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Maybe, yeah.
Kubernetes, it's Pax Kubernetes, right? That was the world we were looking at. There's nothing, to dim the bright lights. And I think because we were looking for something that would replace Kubernetes, but instead I think what we have found is something that Kubernetes may not be able to sort of internalize, and that's AI, right? We could use AI to try to make Kubernetes better, but can we use Kubernetes to make AI better? And that fundamentally is going to be the question of whether Kubernetes, we stay in a Pax Kubernetes kind of world, or do we go into a dark ages after Rome fell or something like that? But on top of that, though, there's some metrics that back it up. Chris and I were talking about it earlier. Mike and I spoke about it yesterday. Look, they're crowing about 15 point something million members in the cloud native community.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. But when you look underneath that, this show has been flat to even slightly down. I saw there was only about 9,000 and something people here, not the 10,000. So it's been flat to slightly down. 60% of the people here are here for the first time. And that also is a kind of a steady statistic we've seen, at least in the US. Europe's still a little bigger, and I don't know about the 60% number. All right.
So from the community side of things, right, if I look at the Kubernetes community and the AI things that are happening in the community itself, we see some work groups popping up. AI Conformance, a number of other AI working groups that the community has said are needed now. And that's because Kubernetes has kind of become the platform to do AI at scale. But at the same time, yes, can we make AI better through Kubernetes? That's where we're moving towards.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a large community and consensus takes time sometimes.
Yeah.
So we are seeing some things progress very quickly. We saw an announcement yesterday with my friend Mario Valent talking about what the AI Conformance Group has done. And I'm excited about that. But at the same time, I feel like the Linux OS and Kubernetes have a similar journey. We're getting to the point now where you no longer need a Kubernetes specialist on your team. The skills are becoming more ubiquitous, right? People understand containers like never before. People understand pods, deployments, CRDs, the whole gamut of ways you can instrument something in Kubernetes. So with that kind of realization, Red Hat, for example, a lot of their revenue was from support for RHEL long ago. Now it's support for OpenShift.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to me. And we're seeing a lot more Kubernetes usage in general across industry, which is great to see. So at the same, yes, there are some gaps showing. I think those are more socioeconomic than actual technology concern.
I don't know, that I hear the tension along two paths. One is AI workloads are stateful and they need to scale really high, and Kubernetes was never originally designed for that. And we run databases today on Kubernetes, but we don't run them at that level of scale.
Right.
So people are saying, do we need to fix some of that engine and what goes into that work?
Yes.
And then the second thing that people are talking about is, Kubernetes is not the only game in town. And you go talk to the data science community, and they like a thing called Slurm. It's a job schedule that they're using as an alternative to Kubernetes orchestration because it's more accessible, and to them, this makes more sense. And they look at the Kubernetes thing, and it's like, a bunch of IT guys telling them that there's this greatest thing over here to use. Data scientist looks over at Kubernetes and goes,
doesn't fit along running jobs well. Yeah, exactly.
There is that.
Yeah.
There is that.
I know from my company's perspective where I work now, yes, Slurm is a big deal. But underneath that, there's this technology called Werewolf, open source project, widely used. It's stateless or stateful cluster management at scale. It was designed for the HPC world, but is suddenly really relevant in the AI era.
Yep. There you go. You heard it here on Techstrong, gang.
That's Slurm.
Werewolf
Slurm comes from the same HPC community.
Right. So we're seeing the Werewolf project itself starting to adopt Slurm standards and everything else so that you can actually drive those workloads in a more open manner.
But let me not call BS, but let me just bring out statistics or metrics that I've heard around Kubernetes adoption.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, in greenfield application deployments, Kubernetes and that whole cloud native stack, containerized application, microservices, probably represents 75, 80, 85% of greenfield.
Right.
Critical mass.
Sure.
It is the standard. It's the compute stack.
Bingo.
But yet, when we look at the entirety of applications that are running in the world, not just in cloud, Kubernetes, cloud native, microservice architecture, they represent 15% of the existing applications. And that stat stayed steady now for a while. We have made no inroads into transforming, modernizing, I don't really care what you want to call it.
Right.
This existing base, which is still larger than, all of the new stuff we come out with all of this time.
Well, I think what's happened is people have realized new workloads, yes, Kubernetes, you want that ability to scale fast, you want that ability to just interact with APIs. But your previous legacy workloads aren't necessarily designed to work like that either. And because their legacy, re-architecting isn't exactly going to be high on the priority list.
I think this
legacy to me means moneymaker.
Absolutely,
right?
Right. I don't mess with
legacy means to me, it ain't broke. Don't.
Right. But I do think
that mentality is starting to change finally, I think.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, we went through the DevOps era, right? I'm not saying DevOps is dead or anything like that, but we've evolved SRE.
Glad you're not saying that, Chris.
Right. we still have to go back to those DevOps principles.
Yes.
Because that's the problem. We need to be able to scale these legacy applications, but we're still managing them with proprietary network gear. We're not using open source load balancers or anything for that matter on those workloads, which is putting them at a disadvantage. Because open source is kind of the concrete foundation of a lot of these workloads.
I don't think anybody really knows, honestly, how those workloads are actually constructed.
That's a problem too.
And so they're hoping maybe these AI tools will help with that. But if I don't know how the thing is constructed, I can't carve off a microservice off of this thing and start slicing it up. The only way I can get there is, I got to call a consulting firm, and then they show up with, 50 kids in a bus who move in for a year and a half.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And not cheap. But let me call out an elephant in the room, though.
Sure.
They call this show KubeCon. The official name, of course, was CloudNativeCon.
Right.
But I think they stopped trying to correct people a few years ago, and it's just KubeCon.
Yeah.
But KubeCon has become a binary star system. And right over there is Open Telemetry Land, or whatever they call it. Right?
Right.
And when you take OpenTeleMotel, and you take Prometheus, and you take some of these other observability projects that are in CNCF, it kind of reminds me of the Arthur Clarke 2001 where Jupiter becomes a star.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You have a new star in this system, and it rivals the old star. And is this town big enough for 2 stars?
Yes, I think having 2 stars in the same foundation is a good thing, right? Looking at it from the CNCF perspective, if I put that hat on, I see it as growth. Externally, it's not creating confusion, which I think is some of the problems with a 2-star system, right? Like, which one do I choose? No. One complements the other. So that's kind of set up well. But the thing that I've noticed is I'm starting to see things like Prometheus used in non-cloud native contexts. So I'm starting to, see exporters on literally.
So is that a bad thing?
That's not a bad thing. That's called maturity.
Yep.
And if someone's not using Kubernetes, but they are using some of the open and underlying components of Kubernetes, that's still a win in my book, right? Kubernetes is not the destination. It's a part of the journey. So if we're looking at higher level abstractions, OTel fits right in. And it makes a lot of sense to start using those things in non-cloud native workloads because they're more efficient, right? Like, we've driven the efficiency into the underlying applications.
Yeah. So is there something to be done to jumpstart innovation a little bit in the Kubernetes TOC, or is this just the nature of democracy as a messy system and it is what it is?
Well, I can't comment on the TOC component or creating more innovation, but what we've seen is this very sharp uptick in AI investment. And that's kind of pulling some of those engineers and folks into those projects and not necessarily towards Kubernetes.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure that the AI people are in the boat with us is kind of how I'm seeing 2026 play out.
Okay.
More so than...
or Kubernetes gets in the AI boat.
Both are, very...
cross pollination.
Yes, like, let's work together. Let's push these things forward in a more collaborative manner than our normal company-based silos, which is good.
Yeah.
Let's lash these boats together and have a party.
Yeah, let's make a yacht out of all
that
these boats,
sounds, You know what? We've got to end this segment, but I'll end it with this, though. Let's keep an eye on Amsterdam and see what trends continue or what we can spot from there. So you'll have to wait until March on that. But we're going to be right back here in TechStrong Gang, and we're going to talk. What are we talking about next, Mike?
We're talking about Kserve, an open source project
native
now moved into the CNCF.
Very cool. You're watching TechStrong Gang.
You've earned it. The spotlight, the responsibility, the weight of teams, companies, and entire industries fall on your shoulders. Lives depend on your decisions, your home life included. At work, you're protected, physically and digitally. Nothing gets through your team without a fight. But in a globally connected world, everyone sees you. including those who mean to cause you and your organization harm. And now home, your sanctuary. Attackers see an opportunity. Your digital front door is wide open. And what compromises your home can breach your boardroom. Because the devil's greatest trick isn't targeting your workplace firewall. It's convincing you that your personal life isn't at risk. Black Cloak. Digital executive protection, defending the new attack surface. Your personal life.
Hey folks, we're back, and as promised, we're going to talk a little bit about KServe, a project that was in a different Linux foundation and is now moving over to the CNCF. KServe is a distributed inference server, is one way of thinking about that, and a lot of more of the AI workloads are becoming more distributed, so that's a good thing. I talked to at least one of the maintainers, and basically they said they just wanted to be hanging out with the cool kids because this is where they're going to do a lot of the integration work going forward. And the other project feels like maybe it's starting to be more of a data science kind of project team, and it's an AI foundation within the Linux Foundation, and those guys are all focused on data and training, and the inference stuff is just hardware stuff that they're not interested in. So maybe it is better to have this over here, but you're closer to this. What's your take?
I think, so we've gone through some serious changes in the past, I think, 5 years when it comes to open source or just community events in general. So KubeCon is the one that's attracting a lot of attention. We talked about that in the last segment, but the everyone in the same pool model is kind of working, right? Like we've seen the CNCF landscape drive valuation in companies, and now we're seeing it draw in more tooling, which is a pretty good thing, I think.
CNCF landscape thing gives me a headache.
Yes, they've made some improvements in the past year to make it less headache inducing, but I remember when they used to print those things. And that required a magnifying glass.
So you needed a special printer to do those.
Yeah.
What do they call those things? I slipped it out in sheets. But here's the thing. So Mike, I think the proper nomenclature is it's not another Linux foundation. It's a daughter foundation of the Linux Foundation.
Right.
Same way theoretically CNCF. And I'm just not sure how cool that is. Is this a bunch of baby birds in a nest and we just saw a baby bird eat his brother or sister?
Hard to say. But I think KServe will probably get starved for engineering resources in that other daughter foundation, whereas it probably will be able to leverage up more on the core Kubernetes work here. I hope, I cross my fingers. But whether it's KServe or not, we got to figure out a way to make those AI workloads more distributed, because we can't just keep scaling them up. We got to scale them out. And that's kind of the big challenge.
I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying at a higher level, what's healthier for the Linux Foundation?
Okay.
Right?
In that regard, I would think, fewer foundations, more concentrated work efforts is a good thing, I would think, right? Because I've seen foundations come and go.
So why do they keep spinning up so many foundations?
Right.
Got to ask Jim.
Yeah, you got to ask Jim on that one, but I think that's more so the business model of the Linux Foundation than it is the actual industry, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there are, I don't know how many daughter foundations there are.
I thought there was like 40 something.
Is that all?
Maybe more than. I know, the last I looked, it was 42, something like that.
Well, that makes sense. 42.
Yeah.
But the thing I think with Knative serving is the K, right? Kubernetes is the underlying thing.
Right, so it belongs here.
It belongs
and
here.
maybe it's a case where it was just put in the wrong place to begin with.
It could have been,
and now it's a correction.
Well, because here's the thing, right? Like Kubernetes and AI both kind of blew up at the same time, for lack of a better term, at least NVIDIA, right? Like when I think about AI workloads, I think 70% of them are NVIDIA's.
Sure.
So NVIDIA is scaling vertically, not necessarily horizontally right now with their chips. They're saying, what was it? The Jensen comment was like 100x performance or something like that on their newest GPUs. Like that's huge, but that is a rip and replace operation, not necessarily making the most of the hardware you have.
Plus, or you take the old ones and sell them to countries that can't buy the new ones.
Well, No, actually, you say that, but
Right.
what those countries are actually doing is
Buying it
putting all the
elsewhere.
data on hard drives, flying the engineers to a data center where they can churn through all that data and then bringing it back.
But so that's very training specific. Hopefully, as we move beyond training to inference and other stuff, they won't be able to do that. But who knows?
We need to move the processing of the data and the inference closer to the network edge where the data is being created and consumed, because otherwise
Is this another pitch for WASM?
there's a thing called latency. There's a thing called latency that
Yes.
gets in the way.
Latency is always going to be an issue, right? Like I actually talked to a new contributor at the Kubernetes SIG meet and greet yesterday, and we were talking about the physics of networking
Yeah.
are going to start getting in our way. So how do we work around those physics? Every company supposedly has a solution to that, but what we're seeing now is more mergers and acquisitions than new companies spinning up. So as things become more pressed against the physical limits of like atoms and, light and things like that, we're going to start seeing some better use cases for older GPUs, for older inferencing systems, and then scaling them up for today's examinations and workloads is going to be interesting.
I laugh because we're going full circle. So when I
Yes.
was young, somebody once drove into my head, you should always bring the compute to the data. Nothing good happens when you move the data. So then we did the cloud and we moved data into the cloud.
Right.
And now we're coming back full circle and saying, you know what? We got to bring the compute back out to the data.
It's cyclic. This whole thing is
I
cyclic.
got a point of order. I find that hard to believe someone told you that when you were young.
Yeah. Yeah.
His definition of young.
This is back when I was covering BDP11s and
Oh.
VAXs. So,
Nice.
in the digital world, we had real computer science.
We had real computer science, not these guys today. All right, fair enough. You know what though? Welcome the project to the CNCF.
Yes.
Come on in. There's 200 other people swimming in this pool, and I do think this may be a case more of correcting
Yes.
a misplacement prior than anything else. Let's take a break here on the gang. We'll come back, and we have our third topic today, which is Google. Have they lost the love for CNCF or Linux? I don't know. You're watching TechStrong Gang.
Discover TechStrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with TechStrong Group.
Hey folks, we're back, and I've been at the show all week, and there's a lot of things happening here, but I will say that this thing that we're about to talk about is probably the coolest thing I saw since I got here.
Oh,
And basically what Google's announced is that they've created a sandbox for running your AI agents so that the AI agent can't go in wild and just start pulling stuff from all over the place. It creates a little bit of a barrier around the actual agent, which is good news because right now our biggest problem with AI agents is everybody's deathly afraid that these things are voracious and we don't know what they're going to do when. So I kind of like this idea. It's built on that Vizard thing that Google came out
Yes,
with a few
went out
years
for
ago.
a while, yeah.
And so that to me was like, hey, somebody's actually solving a problem we were all talking about. But
Yeah.
but the issue then becomes, as I was walking away, I was like going, wow, Google's building a lot of cool stuff that they don't seem to be like giving back to the CNCF folks. They seem to be either using that because they think it adds value to their model of GKE, or is it that they just got tired of the politics?
Well, yeah, I can't speak to the politics of it all, but I think what we're seeing is we're starting to see folks use AI, and they're having interesting challenges with it, right? Like,
No doubt.
I know I had a conversation with a couple engineers a few weeks ago where it was like, yeah, I was using AI to build this tool and ended up deleting my cluster because it thought it could do something better, which failed, so I reverted back. da-da-da-da.
Luckily, you were able to revert.
You
back.
revert. Thank you for using Git. I don't think I've ever said that before in my life, but the need for safety is very high right now because you can't think of all the edge cases to tell put in a prompt, essentially say, you're using the underlying infrastructure, don't change it.
Right.
Make it work to your advantage, as opposed to starting from scratch and saying, I have this problem, help me solve it, go, and then all of a sudden everything gets broken in the process of you just saying go.
Right. I mean,
Great.
it's an interesting, there's other ways to get after this too. I was talking about this with Chronosphere, and they've kind of taken a graph and wrapped it around the LLM, and so the LLM only sees what the graph tells it can see, and so they're using the graph as a controlling function. But I think that's a good way of making it a little more deterministic, because I'm only limiting the amount of data that I can show this thing, but I still need guardrails and policies, and I still have to figure out whether or not I trust the output or not. But we seem to be starting to put together, a fabric or an ecosystem of things around the LLMs to kind of control the output better.
And I think there's good reason for that, right? We're all a little worried about that use case I was speaking of actually like happening in production kind of thing, where you blow away my legacy infrastructure because you think you can do better, but you don't. So when we look at systems built on safety, I know the air traffic control network has had issues this week. We've all kind of been delayed getting here to the conference and everything, but that's a system built on safety first.
Yes.
Where AI is a system built on innovation first. So it's very easy to innovate, but it's harder to make it safe. And you have to build for safety first.
Before we had this air traffic control system, though, it was an innovation first system, right?
Yeah.
You got to walk before you run, and you can't make wine before it's time, right? So I think we're still in that barnstorming stage of AI, if you will, right?
With wing walkers and everything else. Yes.
Take us in that aviation. We'll eventually get there. But guys, I think you're missing the story here. The story isn't about the tech. The story is about, why isn't Google donating open source projects to foundations anymore? Or clearly not like what they were. And that might be a political issue, but I don't know if it's political, it's financial, it's not that Google's no longer not doing evil.
It's also the pace of innovation, right? I mean, if I got a committee,
There might be that they feel it slows down the innovation.
Consensus can take time, and that's neither here nor there. That doesn't mean they can't release it later once they've got everything they need in a row, but
didn't you hear authoritarianism is cool again? Come on.
Jeez. Yeah, there's that.
Stay tuned for Shimmy Says at 2:30. I talk about this, but no, it's not authoritarianism in that hey, Google put the resources into developing this. They're entitled to do what the heck they want with it.
Right.
But when you look at, this whole thing built on Kubernetes that Google donated, and the input and influence it had on even just establishing the CNCF.
Yeah.
Are we missing out on the next CNCF, on the next community-wide, industry-wide revolution because Google's keeping this close to the chest, to their breast?
I think Google has learned some interesting lessons.
Yes.
When it comes to A, cloud, B, cloud native, and then C, open source versus closed source versus something else, right?
Yeah.
Like they see an advantage in the
middle.
I remember a thing called Anthos from Google that is basically become Google Autopilot, GKE Autopilot. And I think that serves their customers very well. And some of that you can do with open source, but the actual getting all the kinks ironed out is proprietary.
Right.
Which I think that's where folks are starting to find value, is making resilient systems better and making them less error prone and more safe, going back to our original commentary.
Democracy is the most inefficient system of government. but it is the best.
It is the best.
I will tell you, I'm starting to hate this phrase that comes out of the valley about go fast and break things. Because if you're if you're the guy on the plane, that's not what you want to hear.
No.
Oh, God.
No one wants to hear go fast and break things on a boat, a plane, or anything. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. But, you know, I think, so when you look at it from a historic, right? You look at open source. So you had your sort of, you know, your cathedral and bazaar phase with Richard Stallman, Dr. Richard Stallman and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where it was unrealistic Marxism.
Yeah.
In a society of atheistic saints, right?
Yeah. Nice.
But then it went to like this big brother open source where a Google, an IBM, a Sun, well, not Sun, they were good.
Yeah.
Whoever, a company, HP, they did open source a particular tool or project, but they had their own opinions and ideas and wants for it.
Right.
So they retained control. But in doing so, it froze competition, or it froze co-opetition out. Right? So if you were IBM and I was HP, well, God darn, I'm not going to contribute to your success.
Right.
Then we had this foundational era of open source where IBM and HP could work together along with Apple and Google and Meta and what have you. Are we seeing that era now, maybe?
That's a great question. And I think, you know, we were talking earlier, all the companies I've worked at that have told me not to work with other certain companies on a, you know, competition-based thinking, I've worked with all those companies in the community.
Right.
So we are now at a point where those companies are saying, okay, our teams are working with these other companies in open source. Is that the best thing for us right now?
Yeah.
And they're rethinking the now, not the future, because the future is open, let's face it, right?
Yeah.
So right now, with belts tightening, folks having to buy more GPUs and a lot of expenditures on infrastructure, yeah, you're going to see things just not get the weight pushed behind them to make them popular in open source. They're going to drive the bottom line to increase revenue.
True. Some of these things, though, I mean, where they collaborate, theoretically at least, should be on something as non-differentiated value, right? It's just an enabling tech. But I think to your point, it's getting harder to determine what's non-differentiated value. Everybody's freaking out.
Today's non is tomorrow's yes.
Right.
There certainly is that. There is that. See all these people taking pictures of us. I feel like, I don't know, we're doing something wrong. Anyway, guys, we're about out of time here. We've got the show floor is open and we've got interviews and stuff to do. Chris, man, thank you so much for coming in here and popping in.
Appreciate
We've
it.
got to get you into the rotation.
Sure.
We had a lot to the conversation.
Thank you.
Mike, what do you got planned for the rest of today?
I'm going to visit more booths and shake some hands and kiss some babies and running for office.
Oh, but we need a politician in the CNCF.
Politician. Great.
Okay.
Thanks.
I hope you've enjoyed this Tech Strong Gang. We will be back next week with our normal Tech Strong Gang back in studio, but it's been a hell of a lot of fun doing it here. I'm Alan Shimel. Thanks for watching. You're out. We're out.